Before we start the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors for 2025. SEBA, the Southeastern Beefmaster Breeders Association. Jones Beefmasters, Mr. Clark Jones of Savannah, Tennessee. Valor Cattle Company with Jordan Taylor in Hahira, Georgia. Rockin' RB Cattle Company, Crosby, Texas. Beef, the Beefmaster Education Endowment Fund. Our host, JCS Farms Beefmasters, Jared Strickland, Savannah, Tennessee. Emmons Ranch Beefmasters, Fairfield, Texas. Cottage Farms Beefmasters, Jackson, Tennessee. Lissy's Beefmasters, Stockdale, Texas. C&M Ranches, Kershaw, South Carolina. Our other host, G&M Cattle Company, Josh Morrison, Taylorsville, North Carolina. And Sea Shepherd Beefmasters, McAllen, Texas. Thank you for all your support. We couldn't do it without you. Welcome to Beefmaster Banner. We're your hosts, Josh Morrison and Jared Strickland. How's it going, Jared?
It's going good. Trying to thaw out a little bit.
Man, it's cold.
It's been cold.
I mean, cold ain't even a word for it. It's
Yeah.
I just wouldn't survive in Montana or North Dakota or
We sit here complaining about it being cold, but everybody north of us is like, hey, how funny.
That'd be short sleeves down here. Man, I'm telling you. We were talking earlier today. I was talking with the family, and I don't think that I remember it being below freezing for 3 days in a row in years and years and years. I mean, I don't know that I ever remember it being. I remember it being freezing, maybe a full day, 24 hours.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I remember it being that cold that long. And it has been, it sucks.
You definitely wouldn't know good if you got to do that for weeks at
Oh,
a time.
man. That'd be awful. You talking about
Yeah.
burning through hay, though. That's, we talk about that, but that's a real thing. I mean, the colder it gets, the more hay you're going to use.
Yeah, they burning through it the last few days for sure. I know them boys down in south, the Gulf Coast getting that snow. I figure they've had a time too. I just couldn't believe. I was looking at there on the Weather Channel. They was showing Pensacola beach getting 9 inches of snow.
I ain't never seen that before.
We ain't even hardly seen that very many times up
Shoot,
here.
no. Well,
So
just like down at the coast, our weatherman was telling us, he's like, you never see snow that big east of like I-85, I-95 that way. It's always our way.
yeah.
But man, I'm sure thankful it's down there and not over here.
Especially after our little round we had.
We got about
Weeks ago.
probably about 3 inches the other day, and that was all it took for me to. I'm ready for spring.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
ready for 100-degree days and people to be complaining about them.
we've had our snow day and all that. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, yeah, and make sure you're drying your calves off if you're having calves right now, because I know some people are.
Yeah,
You don't want them. You don't want them ears frostbitten.
no, they do that.
They thankfully we're kind of in a lull right here. It kind of worked out. We had a couple of calves right before the real big cold, and then I think everything else is going to kind of wait. It's supposed to warm up this weekend a little bit, so see how it goes.
It's spring calving's about to here where we're at. A lot of commercial guys they'll calve in that January, February, and March time frame. So, several folks calving right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And speaking of calving, we're going to kind of talk about. So we've told you we were going to kind of hit more hot topics last year, and we're going to do just that right now. I saw a post the other day on the Beefmaster Talk page, and they're on Facebook, and it was, what is your, help me if I do this wrong, but what is your ideal opinion of what a donor is, pretty much? And we thought we'd tackle that. We give you our opinions, and we'll probably read some of these comments off because there are some really good comments, but it seems like all of them are a little bit different, which is pretty neat to me because everybody's going to have their own opinion. I mean, of what a donor is. Do you think somebody else's donor would be for you? Probably not, but the bulls that they're mating them to, they just found what works. And I think that's the first and foremost thing, is just find what works.
That's easier said than done. It takes years to do that sometimes, and sometimes you get lucky and hit the right one. And sometimes you may hit the right one, but still not a bad idea to experiment, see if you do better.
Well, and if you do hit the right one, you will still get a bad one from time to time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, you may have 50 good ones and then a bad one pop out. It just,
It's kind of like with well, it's like with our bull lighted up that Willie and Dad use. We flushed his mama over and over and over again to a couple bulls and they worked good. I mean, they worked good, but decided to try something else, and when we did with Ring of Fire, we're like, well, why we've not been doing this. So I mean, it's always something to think about. You can always get better. But no,
and
there's a lot of good opinions out there. Read through that Facebook post too, and it was pretty neat.
it's definitely a hero or zero moment for flushing. We've talked about that in the past, different ways to flush,
Yeah,
things like that. But
we've covered like I think last year we talked between would you flush a heifer? Does it have to be a cow? And I know
yes,
we probably covered some things that makes a donor in that episode, but we're going to specifically talk about our opinion of what makes the donor, not necessarily that, but uh,
and I know Jared's gonna agree with me here, but number one, they've got phenotypically, they have to be that right kind. And when I say phenotypically, I'm talking the whole kit and caboodle. Looks, feet. Feet are probably the most important part to me, as far as longevity, um, hardiness, because if they can't travel and they can't stand up to breed, or they're going to pass that along. And Jared, you've told me before. I mean, that's a highly heritable trait, correct?
yeah, I mean, you can breed it out of them. That's not something, but you wouldn't want your donor cow to have a conformation issue. So that would go with, like you said, your feet and your legs. Your structure needs to be correct. Uh, udder would definitely be another thing. Obviously, you want some eye appeal with your donor, I think, as well, because you're about to possibly mass produce per offspring. It's going to be expensive, and I think, I mean, well, we all we know our opinion on how that is. We want our cattle to look a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Uh, so that's part of the package too. But you're right. You got to pass those first traits on first, and they got to pass that confirmation look because I mean, I wouldn't really know as far as like high heritability versus low heritability, but I would say one with structure issues, you definitely have a good chance of getting calves with structure issues.
Yes. Well, and it goes back to what you said. It's expensive. It's
Mhm.
expensive. So make sure. I mean, you wouldn't want to take just anything to be flush because it is so expensive. I mean, I'm gonna say on average, you're probably somewhere around 300 an egg is what you normally come out roughly. I mean, all that's gonna vary, but
Yeah, I mean nowadays you can say that, especially with the IVF type technology, because you're kind of setting in a certain fee.
and that don't sound like a lot, but I mean, it is a lot of money when you're sticking it in a recip. And
Got 30%, 40% conception.
yeah, and I mean, you're banking, and you're banking to, especially if you're reverse sorting semen
Hmm.
and you're um wanting females to, obviously you're going to retain most of them. I'd say you may sell a couple. I think everybody probably does, but flushing to me is the quickest way to improve your herd, around your best cows, your best couple
Yeah, I mean
cows.
that's kind of the reason the technology even exists is to find a way to cut that waiting game down. You take a cow, especially now that you can, let's say if she's had a couple calves, over her lifespan, if she makes to say she makes 10 to 12 calves in her lifetime, which would be a good productive cow. But with this new technology, the IVF, I say new technology, it's been a while. But I'm just saying, as far as using that technology, you could have you could have 10 or 12 calves, a couple aspirations or three if you got good conception. And she's gonna have a lifetime full of calves in one season if you get that many embryos put in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's the thing is it's important that you're using the right one.
And all the factors that go into owning the cow, you know, all of the everything in the environment, the stress, you know, I mean, let's face it, there's disease or, they'll get sick and die on you. And, if it's one of your best cows that produces every single time, why not stick some of those in the tank just for insurance purposes? I mean, um, it's not a bad thing to have those for sure.
Yeah, and, we was talking about IVF, but see, like on conventional, you talk about even if you're doing a conventional flushing, uh, talk about the expense of it. That that one is a little bit more variable as far as what you're going to have in the eggs, because typically, you're going to have a cost. Say they charge a certain amount to actually do the flushing, and then you'll have those eggs come out, and in that sense of thing, it kind of, your stimulation and different things like that uh, are pretty important as well. On a conventional flush, you could be kind of like a hero or zero moment, like we've talked about earlier. You may have a lot of eggs or you may have none. And it goes both ways. IVF, same way. But typically with IVF, you may pay a fee, but typically you don't really pay too much of a fee if you don't get any eggs. It's kind of how that one works. But with the conventional, you're dropping the semen off in there and using several more straws of semen to do that. So I mean, it gets it can be more expensive if you don't have a good, and that goes back to, I mean, I like, you go past, I might be skipping ahead of what we're going to talk about, but, you know, it's a good point to make right now is if you have a donor, what makes a donor is a donor that will give you eggs. That's
Absolutely.
some, that there's cows out there that won't make eggs. I mean, you may get a handful, but when you flush a cow, especially conventionally, you'd rather have one that makes 20, 30 eggs than one that makes five. Because you're going to have a whole lot more expense in those five eggs than you would so it's a game of average.
Absolutely.
You're going to have a fixed expense involved into those eggs. So you want one, and I mean, I don't have no research to back this up, but I would say more fertile type cows will probably flush better because they're going to give out more eggs typically. So there's certain lines of cattle in our breed that will flush better than others.
Hmm.
So looking into those donors, I look at the mama, I look at the grandmama. Have they been flushed? Did they come from me, or they ET or whatever? Figure out, talk to the owner if you bought them. How's that cow flush, or how's her grandmama flush? Get some ideas about that too, because I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but that's something to think about because you want a cow that's gonna give some eggs.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and that you you just completely put my point on the map too. Pedigree. Pedigree matters, folks. And I know that some people out there will tell you that it don't. But when you're looking for a donor, I can promise you pedigree matters just because what you said.
Well,
Look at
what's
their
the point of
mama,
if
look at their
pedigree don't
grandma.
yeah, if pedigree don't matter, why don't we keep up with the paper?
That's exactly right. Why do we care about registration?
So I
But I
mean,
mean,
so there's parts of that.
some of my criteria is obviously phenotype. Um, I would like, not in any specific order, phenotype, pedigree. I'd like to see some carcass. It doesn't have to be the greatest in the world, but I'd like to see some to see what we're working with. And obviously, we know with carcass we have to go off the EPD now, so that's a little bit of a change. Um, but that's kind of, I would like to see a calf or two out of her. I would love to see three calves, truthfully, But in the world we live in today, I'm just going to tell you, it's hard to have 3 calves and then decide you're going to flush one because you're four. Let me do my math. You're 4 years down the road.
Mhm.
No, you're 5 years down the road. I'm just going to tell you, you will get behind really fast. And I'm not saying it's a wrong thing to do. I like it, but in the world we live in today, it's so fast paced and it's so ever changing. That cow you buy to sell today, 5 years from now, other people that has bought things close to her, and they're 3 generations down the line or 2 generations down the line already. I
Yeah, the
know that can
IVF
be
is,
a
yeah, that's right. I mean, that's right. The IVF situation causes that to be a reality. You can take a heifer flusher to IVF aspiration. Have the if you had her set up fresh or whatever, you got the eggs in. She's 14 months old. Put the eggs in. By the time she has her first calf, you've got embryo calves on the ground too, her first natural calf. Well, by the time one of those heifers gets to 14 months old, they may start flushing one of them. I mean,
yeah.
you could have 3 generations of a lot of off the same pedigree line, I guess you could, as you would, that off that donor dam real fast.
Well, and
I'm not
I
saying
I
go
know
out
we'll
there and
probably
do that. I'm just saying that's how reality is.
I know we're going to get some hate for that comment, but it's the truth. You can you can have your 3 calves, man. That's fine. Go have them. But I was telling you, like you said, they will be generations down the line before you have your third calf and decide you want to flush her. And you're still taking a gamble at that point because who's to say that if you want them, you want 3 calves from 3 different bulls, who's to say that those weren't flukes and you just had a good one out of them? So I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's just as big of a gamble going ahead and flushing one that that you see fit because generally you go to a production sale or you buy something that you really like with the aspects of them improving your herd. It's a gamble when you spend the money, whether you spend 3,000 or you spend 50,000 or 100,000. It's a gamble if that heifer is going to do what you want it to do. Even before you flush it, just breed her.
Oh yeah.
Um, you
Especially when
know,
you spend that kind of money. And if you spend that kind of money, you know, a lot of times you want to gather some eggs or embryos, to have as insurance if something was to happen to her a few years down the line or
yeah. I
something
mean,
like that.
and then you give enough money for one. At some point, you're about forced to flush them. I mean, right?
Well, yeah.
I mean,
But that's why you spend that kind of money on them is because they've got that they're checking these boxes, right? That we've just
yes.
talked about.
Now here's another hot take for they're gonna have all kind of hot takes from us tonight. How much money you spend on a cat does not mean if she's a donor. You may buy her in the aspect or the hopes of being a donor. Does that make sense?
Oh, I agree 100%.
I mean, I'm not downing anybody for spending 100 grand on a heifer or 3 grand on a heifer, but I've spent less
Still
than three
got
grand
still
on
got
a
to prove
heifer
her.
before, and she's been one of the best cows we've ever had. Now, is it just one of them things that happens? I don't know. Could be. But there's another hot take tonight. I'm curious how many rocks we're gonna get slung at us
Oh,
next week.
gotta have a few thrown at you.
Yeah. Well,
But with that said, too, if you got a cow that is out there producing good calves and she don't miss, that's when you flush.
go flush her.
She's got all the traits and you haven't flushed her yet, and she keeps having good calves, that's when you flush her.
And you may have one in your pasture that you raised
Oh yeah.
and you didn't buy that turns into your donor. And that's, hey, you're light years ahead of everybody if you've got that. And I mean, I've seen people that have it. It's great. Um, there are some that we raise that I'm like, if she has a couple good calves, we'll consider flushing her. And there's some that I kind of wish I would have flushed as heifers, and there's some I'm glad I didn't when I thought about it. It just is what it is. But my reasoning behind my list of stuff is phenotype. We've already talked about that. Pedigree, we've kind of hit on that, but you know, it matters to me, and it should matter to pretty much everybody, especially when we look for a donor cow to flush. Because if you don't have that, I mean, you don't know what she's going to do. But now we have. I mean, why not use the technology we have at our fingertips, and as digital beef, and you know, all these pedigrees and all the people that's raised these cows that, 3, 4, 5 generations back, and look and see if they've produced every time. And if they have, then that would make me feel a lot better flushing a heifer if I was going to do that versus not knowing anything about their pedigree.
When you're flushing cows, I mean, that's another thing to think about too. Uh, I'm sure there's some people hit on it in the topic. Um, and that's something for us too is marketability, because if you're going to, let's say either if you're going to grow a herd or if you're flushing just to strictly sell, you got to have marketability. That goes along with your pedigree, but also they got to be good. So that they got to be something that people want. So I wouldn't flush a cow if it's out of something that you won't think people would want. I mean, that's something you got to think about. Because you're going to have so much expense in there that as you go further in the years advance, growing that herd or reselling those ET calves, you've got to get quite a bit of a payback for them.
Yeah, right. I mean, is there anything else on your list that I've not said that would be in your criteria?
Well, I know this doesn't go as strictly with like flushing heifers, but is number well, fertility is something else that's right there with confirmation from my book.
Yeah.
You don't want fertility is not a highly heritable trait, so you really got to start with it. In my opinion, it's hard to gain it back if that makes sense. It's hard, like I say, it's hard to take something that's not very fertile, breed something to it that is fertile, and try to get back
Mm-hmm.
to it. Uh, one of the I kind of talked with Dr. Reinhardt about that here at UT back when he was the reproductive guy, and he says he's pretty much it says it's hard to gain and it's hard to lose. So like if you start, he said the best way to help fertility, which everybody kind of knows, is you cull your herd. If she ain't fertile, she goes. If she is fertile, she stays. So what you do that by like having a calving season and all that. So if I was to flush heifers, I would definitely want to know the calving record on the dam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if she's hitting her window, there's good chances, not always, but there's a good chances she'll be the same way. I think. Uh, there's a lot of other things that kind of involve in that. I mean, there's a lot of research going on with the fetal programming and stuff like that in utero that we're learning that has a lot more of effect on things than we probably first initially thought. So things could happen during that time to expect that. But that's something that's important because if you're going to keep those especially if we're doing reverse sort, things like that, keep the heifers. You want to know that that cow is going to be fertile. If she's one that's kind of draggy and kind of backs up some, or I say back up, loses ground through the calving season, or totally misses the calving season, she's probably not your donor.
No,
Uh,
I'd agree with that.
but that's hard to pick out on heifers. But that goes back to, and I'm not trying to harp on pedigree too much either, but
But it's important.
that lineage that you see in there, you can check those cows out to see how productive they are. Obviously, if they're out of donors, it's kind of hard to see that sometimes because sometimes, especially in the old days when we were doing so much conventional flushing, you have a donor dam that gets flushed 2 or 3 times. Well, you're flushing every couple months, so you don't have that calving season, I guess. But uh, that's something. No, I think, and that kind of goes back to some of the cattle that we flushed or whatever, and cattle we're flushing now is that's what we want to see is how well they're doing in their cabin.
Yeah, right. Well, and one of these, I was going down through these comments. One of these comments was, in addition, have one or two other breeders that you trust. We always say get you a mentor. Have them look them over. If you're at a sale and you're like, hey, thinking I might try to buy this one for a potential donor, or if you're at home and you want, that is a surefire way for them. I mean, tell them, pick them apart. Then it's not just you. You're getting more. That's a really good comment. That you're getting more opinion from completely different people.
Yeah,
Um,
don't get barn blind.
no, 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 and I mean that really helps.
That goes for your cattle at home. Get people. I know it's hard to do. Get people to come look at them.
Or send, get good
It's,
ones, but send videos, pictures. But you've got to get good ones. You got to make sure they're good ones, because, as we all know, a camera will make one look bad in a heartbeat. A good one look bad in a heartbeat.
yeah,
Um,
that's true. But yeah, I definitely will have people look at your cattle if you can get them to look at you and get look at them and kind of get you a better sense of how they react. Watch how they react. I know that's kind of subtle or whatever, but I think that's something to think about if people come look at your cattle. You know, they kind of like,
yeah.
you can tell when people sugarcoat stuff sometimes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, you can look at their face and tell. I mean,
Yeah.
it's written all over their face
So I
normally.
mean, I'm not trying to get technical with it, but you can kind of tell. I mean, get people to look at them, and they'll tell you their favorites, and a lot of times theirs won't line up. But if there's a real good agreement on one female that's just really a standout, that's a good sign.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, this is just our opinions, folks. So if you've got another one, we'd love to have you on here. We'll talk about it again, because I don't know that there's truly a technically right or wrong answer here. It's what you like, what your customers will buy.
Well, yeah,
You know,
I agree with that. To me, it all boils back to this: what your program does and what your program can sell and how you can be profitable. That's how you select the cattle you breed. Because your customer is the one that has to like the cattle.
oh yeah.
I mean, you may like them and enjoy them. And that gets back to one of the comments on there that when Josh was laughing about was the tax write-off. You know,
Oh, it says
that can become a serious tax write-off if you're flushing a
it
lot.
says it actually says, for tax write off, buy pretty and expensive heifers and enjoy yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, that's that can be one way to select a donor right there if you need a tax write-off.
I love it.
Uh,
That's funny.
but but if you're trying to avoid a tax write-off, you need to select something you can sell.
Yeah, right, right. And no, you're right. I mean, it's just the way it is. And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just our opinion, and that's sort of what we look for. And I know most of y'all know us by now. We agree on a lot of things. So if someone wants to come in here and argue with us, we'll argue with you. It's okay. Um, we have the same, we have a lot of the same, and it's probably because we're in the same part of the world, partially in the same part of the world. So we have the same problems, the same challenges, the same type customers that want to see a certain type of animal.
Hmm.
In the southeast, you get into the Midwest, you get into the Northeast, you get into the, you know, what I call the way out west, California area. They're probably gonna want something different, and that's okay. That's why we make all different kinds. But I hopefully somebody gets something out of this episode. I thought it was a fun one to do. just to kind of sheerly share our opinion and um, kind of let you know how we look at them.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Kind of looking forward. We're going to hit some more hot topics. I know one thing we're hoping to get some folks on here soon to talk about bull development. Uh, so
Yeah, we're going to try to do a series on it of different, of different, without giving names away, different parts of the world, different parts of the, of America. Um, See how they differ and how they compare, and not to compare them, but we've just been really curious, and we actually had a person mention this to us. Um, see how they, what's some similarities, from the southeast to the Midwest, um, to the southwest, different feed yards, how they feed them, how they have to feed them to make them grow, and how they look at their customer base as far as what their customer wants to see. So I think that's going to be um, a fun
it's
couple episodes.
it's going to be interesting to see how many bulls actually get developed over the next year or two with these prices. Uh, it's pretty good incentive right now to have a steer when they're bringing so much.
They're bringing a lot of money.
So that's
What did
something
you say
else
you
that
saw the cattle market at the other day?
the futures is so the CME index is over like 278,
Good
which would be a
grief.
5 area average for 800-pound steers. So that's pretty wild. But we've seen some pretty cool prices over the last week or two. It's been pretty wild. I think I
Oh
saw on
yeah.
Superior they had which I'm sure several people saw it, but I think it was like 310-pound calves brought 553 or 52 or something like that a
Good
pound.
grief. 553 a pound.
That's
My gosh.
that's as
It's crazy.
that's a long way away from a fat calf.
Man. And how big were
Man,
they?
310 pounds. So
310
I mean,
pounds. My gosh.
which I mean, that's on a video auction, so you got to slide and all that good stuff. But I mean, just the base price is a little over $1,700 for 300-pound calves.
That's crazy.
That's interesting.
Well,
But it's kind of funny to think about though, because me and my wife were talking earlier when I come in, because we saw on the news that Steak and Shake is going to start cooking their French fries in beef tallow, which is what they used to cook in. Now they've changed.
it was a lot healthier for them, right?
It's supposed to be healthier, and they say the product's better too. The seed oils, I guess, is a big hot topic, especially with the new administration coming in with and stuff like that. But you think about things like I was thinking about, like 5, 6 years ago, however many it was when that Impossible Burger come out and all the plant-based meat stuff kind of really kicked off. And now you're seeing them struggle, and you're seeing this health, all natural stuff, and like just like with the beef tallow being used as frying oil. It's almost like we were worried as an industry of what that's going to do, and they're still, you got the lab grown meat, you got all these things that's out there. Don't get me wrong, don't take it as if I'm not concerned about it, but it's amazing how much of a shift has happened in the last 5 years. I feel like, I mean, being in the cattle industry right now, I know prices are good, and it's good to feel good about good prices. But if you look at how the consumer is behaving, I don't see how you can't be super excited about the future in the cattle business.
Yeah, at least the
Because
next few years.
well, I mean, the consumer is demanding a good product and they love beef. Because you got to think, I saw the retail index average ended up being for 2024 was like it's right at $8 a pound. So, I mean, the consumer, they sold more beef this year than they expected and all this. So, I mean, they want to turn this into a market outlook kind of thing. But we're talking about flushing cattle. And when you're flushing cattle, you're thinking about the future. You have to be thinking about the future. So, or why else do it? So, I mean, I was I'm really amazed at the cattle industry, and I think it really bodes well for the future because the consumer is going to demand a product that we can produce, a high quality product that we can produce, and I think it's some good times ahead for
Oh, I
those that
think
can
so.
stick it out. I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, no, I am too. I can't wait to see what it does and can't wait to be a part of it. I mean, if you're in the cattle business, you're going to be a part of it. So hang tight, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not gonna lie to you, we kind of winged this episode, so I really hope you like it. I find it easier to wing it sometimes than
Well, you just
to
have a
have something typed
conversation.
out. Yeah. But no, we've got a lot of fun stuff coming up this year. With the podcast, and I think we finally caught our stride this past year, and we got a lot of people listening, and it's really fun to hear people say that they enjoy it. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and you just have to keep listening to see what's next.
Alrighty.
But we'll see everybody on the next episode. Stay warm.
See you.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to the Beefmaster Banner podcast. Please know that we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. Just search Beefmaster Banner. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We love hearing from you. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.